Greetings, this is the Get to Free Press News, and I'm George Boston Rhines, and I'm standing in front of Serenity Church, where Floyd E. Rose is a senior servant. This is the one church in Valdosta and Lowndes County that you do not have to go before a board, a group of deacons, or whoever for them to address your issues and concerns. Reverend Floyd E. Rose has been on the battlefield here in Valdosta and Lowndes County for a long time. And today, I'm going to talk about the renaming of Forrest Street here in the city of Valdosta, Georgia, as we walk our beat. This is the Ghetto Free Press, and I'm George Boston Rhines. And by the way, that's Ghetto Free Press News. And we report what others ignore. Today, I'm down at Serenity Church, and I'm with a very distinguished, honorable gentleman, a retired military veteran. And I was in Omaha, Nebraska. I was up there for a week, and I started getting emails about the renaming of a local street here. And we're going to be addressing that issue among others. But right now, I want my guest, and what's your name?
I'm Paul Ransom, Deacon Paul Ransom here at the Serenity Church here in Valdosta, Georgia.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What was your career, if you don't mind? What did you do?
Oh, I was a reciprocating engine specialist in the Air Force. The reciprocating engine is a gasoline-driven engine, and this was the propeller engine back in World War II and the Korean campaign. This was before jets. Jets came in, I think, in 1953. And before then, everything was recip. The B-29, the plane that dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that was the B-29. I worked on those, the B-50, the B-36, which was, I guess they said that was the reason that there was no World War III, because that was the one plane that could take off and fly anywhere in the world and return without refueling. The jets now can refuel in the air, but the B-36 worked it. All the gasoline engine, all the propeller-driven airplanes. I worked on those. Not every one of them, but quite a few.
Okay, short form. Your life career. You also worked where else? Short form.
Oh, after I retired from the Air Force, I worked for the California Department of Corrections in California. I started at San Quentin in California and worked at 5 different institutions there, and retired from that in 2004.
Okay. Coming to Valdosta to purchase your home, how did you meet the controversial minister here, Reverend Floyd E. Rose?
Well, there's a lady that had a kiosk out at the Base Exchange here in Valdosta. She was a member of this church, and she introduced me to Reverend Rose. Every time I see her, she'd invite me to come to her church. I was
Serenity Church, man.
Serenity. I was attending another church here, but when I came to Serenity and I heard Floyd Rose speak, and I decided the very first time I came, even though it was 3 visits before I finally joined, and that was 3 weeks in advance, 3 weeks in a row, I'm sorry. The first time I said, you know, the weather here fits my clothes. The second time I came, I said, the weather here fits my clothes.
Okay.
The third time, I said, you know, the weather here fits my clothes. So I got up and I joined this church, and I've been here ever since.
Okay, and after coming here, you didn't just become a bench warmer. I understand that you believe in paying tithes. I also understand that you have become active in the People's Tribunal. That is a civil rights organization that started here after the death of Willie James Williams, who was an inmate in the Lowndes County Jail, who died under peculiar circumstances. And Reverend Floyd Rose was one of the strong spearheaders of seeking justice in that case. And so, but to make a long story short, you have found a position in the tribunal, am I correct? And if so, tell me what you do with that.
I'm the vice president of the People's Tribunal.
Okay.
And we're now working on one of the major things we're working on now is changing the name of Forrest Street, which was named after Nathan Bedford Forrest, a Klan leader, slave trader, slave owner, Confederate general.
Let's get into that later. But what I want to talk about, your position in the tribunal. I understand that you read some type of history at your church, and they expect that they be looking forward. I would even say some people probably come to church to hear you give your. Tell us a little bit about that. And how did you get that position?
Well, that's called the moment in Black history. I started doing it right here at Serenity. There's a portion in the service where we pause and I dig up certain facts in Black history, and I present those facts about, it's just a little short thing, couple minutes, about different people. And I also, a lot of the people, if there's a photo available, then I'll also make a photograph for a museum, like you're in this is classroom number 5 for, there's several classrooms here, but we are now in classroom number 5, and as you can see some of the pictures around, all of our, not all of them, because there's more since then, but our African American astronauts. And these pictures are in 3D, and this is one of my creations. So I got the astronauts, the female astronauts. There's Mae Jemison, who was the first African American woman in space, and several other female astronauts, some of the male astronauts. The 3 male astronauts that were lost in accidents. One that was, I think this first one here, he was the one where there's a picture of the shuttle on the picture. These 3 we lost. 2 on the space shuttles going either to or from space. And the very first one, Lawrence, he died in a plane crash at Edwards Air Force Base. And the other 2, one we were lost going into space, and the other one was lost coming back from space. But the rest of the astronauts there, a lot of them still walk among us, and I'm not sure that all of them know.
Okay. Mr. Historian, who pays for these? Like, it seems like they seem like nice, expensive frames. Do you get a grant, or what, how do you?
No, these are all donations. I donate the frames. I do the work. I put them together. I make everything except the frames. I mean, well, the materials. I don't make the materials, but I find the pictures and I process the pictures. I take a picture that's 2-dimensional and I process it into a 3-dimensional picture. And each picture here is what I found either online, and some of the pictures I've taken, well, not in here, but some of the pictures around the museum I've taken myself, but then they were all processed into a 3-dimensional image and then put into a shadow box and then a frame.
Okay,
so finished product. Okay,
so let me interrupt you. So you do all this on your own and at your own cost because you believe in what you do. And I also understand that you give tours here, right?
Yes.
You actually one of the tour guys?
Yes.
And why did you start doing that?
Well, I hated what I did. I was in the Air Force for 20 years, and I didn't like it, but that was a job. I had to work. I got out of the Air Force and I joined the Department of Corrections. Had to work, and they're very, very racist. And at the time I was in the Air Force, it was awful. But I had to have a job. And even if I had gotten out of the Air Force, it would have been racist wherever I went to work. So I just stayed there because I learned how to deal with it in the Air Force. When I've been to prison, I worked at the prison as a vocational instructor for 20 years. And I learned how to deal with it there. And then I came out after retirement with 2 retirements, 2 disabilities, and financially able to do what I want.
Okay.
And this is what I want to do.
And enjoy doing it.
And love it. And okay. I love the Air Force. I love working at the prison. Okay. I wasn't that crazy about the people that I worked with. Okay. But the Air Force itself, I still love it. And I've been retired since 1972. Okay. Still love it. Okay. Still love the prisons.
Okay, Mr. Ranson, I want to appreciate, first of all, your commitment to the armed forces of the military. And
thank you.
I see you say Korea and Vietnam, so yes. That's a great distinguished compliment as far as I'm concerned. I'm a veteran too, but you went much deeper than I went. I want to appreciate that. But coming to Valdosta, I'm sure it was an experience for you, and I think that we're going to talk about Valdosta and South Georgia in general, as well as surrounding counties. That's what we want to do this morning. So I'm going to ask you to, let's move to another location and let's talk about coming to terms with slavery here in South Georgia.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you. Mr. Ranson, what room is this?
This we call the King Room, Dr. King. And in here we've got a picture of Dr. King. That one's not in 3D. But that room was here when I've been here for 3 years. So this room is already set up with that picture already there, so we haven't touched that.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the pictures that's in 3D, they were added since I've been here. Behind me, a picture of the first family, Barack Obama and his family. Our first attorney, first and second African-American Attorney General, Eric Holder. And
well, it just have a vast amount of history here. Mr. Ranson, since we still want to stay focused on the renaming of Forrest Street, because that's what generated this interview or historic documentation that probably would be used here in the museum. Let's say that a person coming here to Valdosta and Lowndes County, they would want to know, what is this city and county all about? So as we talk about coming to terms with slavery in South Georgia, it would intake Valdosta and Lowndes County. So tell us a little bit about the history of coming to terms here in South Georgia.
okay, in 1860, there was at least 2,399 enslaved people in Lowndes County alone. This was 46% of the total population. There were 249 slave owners among the 2,850 white. That's 9% of the white population. While some whites owned dozens of slaves, the average slave owner was just one person. The county seat here in Valdosta was incorporated in 1860, and it was named after Governor George Troop's he had 6 plantations. One of them name was Valdosta, V-A-L-D apostrophe Osta, A-O-S-T-A, pronounced Valdosta. And in 1850, Governor Troop, he owned 29 slaves in Lawrence and Montgomery County. And the land of the new town Valdosta was purchased by William Wisenbaker. He owned 2 slaves, and 2 of the 4 men commissioned to set up Valdosta, William Goldwire and James Harrell, also were slave owners. Goldwire owned 6 slaves, and Gerald Harrell, he was the owner of 7 slaves. The largest plantation in Lowndes County in 1860 was owned by Rebecca Jones.
Okay, Mr. Rance, what room is this?
Now, this is part of our kitchen, and in here we've got pictures that date back to slavery. Mm-hmm. And here in Valdosta, the largest plantation in Lowndes County was owned by Rebecca Jones. She's the widow of Barry Jones. She also owned 37 slaves who ranged in age from 3 to 90 years old. The Jones home sat on the northwest corner of the intersection of Jerry Jones and Gorto Road. Today, that location is occupied by the Church of the Latter-day Saints. The Joe Reed Mill Pond and dam was constructed by slaves of Barry and Rebecca Jones. The largest slave owner in Lowndes County was Rebecca Jones, who owned 96 slaves. They ranged in age from 1 to 62. Now, the largest slave owner in Lowndes County Or just to cover that, Rebecca Jones. Okay?
Mr. Ranson, that's good information, but what was the largest, or who had the largest plantation?
Well, the largest slave owner in Lowndes County at the time was Rachel Jones, who owned 96 slaves, who ranged in age from 1 to 62 years. This is the Valdosta room. Now, this room was dedicated and donated by James Breeden. And here's a picture of some of the black businesses that was here in Valdosta, the grocery stores and cafes. A lot that was done here right in Valdosta. This is musician Louis Jordan, I recognize him, or Ella Fitzgerald. A lot of these people, the entertainers, community service, and sports.
Mr. Ransom, would it be appropriate for me to say that it would be so easy for, especially for the black city council members, to come down here and find a way to get some of these historic buildings to possibly put in the city hall to represent that there was black input in the building of this city?
I think it would be very appropriate. I don't know if it was ever brought up to them.
Yes, I brought up several times.
Okay, well then, I have no clue why they haven't done it, but it would definitely be a good idea, and it would definitely serve a good purpose, especially in teaching folks about the history of our culture and of our contributions here to the city of Valdosta and to the state of Georgia, all over the state of Georgia. You know, everywhere in Georgia, there's streets named after black folks and black contributors to our culture. And Valdosta comes up short on this end, so in our effort to name Forrest Street after one of the clan of Confederate general, slave owner, slave trader, we're trying to get this thing underway by showing some of the stuff that we have, some of the contributions that was made to the state of Georgia by our African American brothers and sisters.
Mr. Ransom, also, when you think about it, the students who go to the metro city of Valdosta City Hall, they will see the Crescent Building and a lot of other buildings, but not one building of significance is displayed of any black-owned business, even a church like Macedonia. So with Valdosta being a majority black metro city now, what would you say to the elected officials here, not only in the city but in the county?
I would say that this is one of the things that has to be changed. We've contributed a lot to this country, to this community, and there's no credit given for the contributions that were made here. And I would say to our city officials, our elected officials, that this has to change. And it has to change now. Let's get to work on, let's get this done.
Okay, I would like to thank you very much. And this is called, what room is this again, my brother?
This is the Valdosta room.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ransom, as we walked through the museum and covered a lot of history, let's focus on the major purpose why I wanted to talk to you this morning, and that is the renaming of Forrest Street. But not only that, the origin of the major Valdosta street names. So as as this metro city house and give home to a federal military installation by the name of Mote Air Force Base. When the base, squadron, and wing commanders ride down through the city and county of Valdosta, they would run into streets, and if they pull up on, say, North Patterson Street, what was that street named after, or what person?
Patterson Street was named after Captain James Patterson. And James Patterson was the owner of 14 slaves in 1860. And those slaves ranged in age from age one to age 50.
And don't you think that not only the name that I call, but the people who are stationed at Moody from around the United States and overseas could glean from that knowledge rather than just riding on the street and not knowing? Don't you think that would be of some value to them?
Oh, I'm sure it would. You know, people, the one history that is lost in this country and in our culture is the history of the African American. And we've been here for over 400 years, and there's such a very little bit known about our history and our culture. I don't know of any, well, there's one little short street here that I know of that's named after one African American, that Minnie Martin, but the street's about 2 blocks long, if that. But all of the contributors, the African American contributors to this society and to this state, to this city, there's hardly any mention at all of the contribution that was made by African Americans.
And if you want to, you can espouse on the statement that I'm about to make. Valdosta is a metro city, a majority black population.
That's right.
But when we look at the street that's named in honor of the Nobel Peace Prize winner, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., it's only 7 blocks. If you go to Quitman, Cairo, Albany, Tifton, most any city in the state of Georgia, if not the United States, have a much longer street than 7 blocks. So it seems as if, though, I'm going to ask you this question. Does it seem that as if Valdosta is behind the times in honoring black people? Because I do believe, I'm still working on it, I want to get the record and show that Valdosta perhaps have the shortest street named after Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.
Well, I'm sure that's true. It's not a very long street, but I have been to cities where Dr. Martin Luther King, the street is much, much, much long. I have no idea how long or how many blocks or how many miles it might cover, but for the contribution that he made to this country, this street isn't nearly long enough.
Right.
And it's primarily in the African American neighborhood.
That's true.
I don't have any
That's
problem with that, but it's for his contribution and for the price that he paid for what he was trying to do
For the world.
country, for the world. The payment of named a little short street after him is far inadequate compared to what he has done.
Okay, we have a local police department here, city police, I may add, and the county sheriff department, Georgia State Patrol post here. As they travel through Valdosta, and if they came up on a street by the name of Ashley Street, what would members of our law enforcement should glean from that name and that street here?
Ashley Street was named, it was named after William Ashley, who owned 17 slaves. He was a slave owner in 1860. And they ranged in age from 2 years to 50 years.
Okay, now, we have a sheriff by the name of Ashley Park, but that's just his first name. So I just want to say there's no relationship that I know of in the name of that, and our beautiful Sheriff Ashley Park. I guess you have nothing to say about that. Okay, all right.
It's
Speak for yourself.
quite an inspiration
Yeah,
to name him, actually.
Yeah. I would like to bring a little, I like to make a point of our elected officials. And if the city officials, this includes Mayor Gale and other city councilmen, if they should just drive down a street, your next street, whatever the name, do you think that they too could be educated as well as informing the public about why this street was named what it is?
Well, I certainly do. And if you notice, each one of these streets are much longer than 7 blocks, which is the length of the
Yes,
street
sir.
named after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes, sir.
Patterson Street is it's extremely long. I don't know in miles. Ashley, pretty close to as long as Patterson. That Troop Street, it was named after Governor George Troop who in 1850 owned 209 slaves in 2 different counties, Lawrence and Montgomery counties.
Okay. As we think about, we've had a black school superintendent of the city. We also have a majority black city school board of education.
Yes.
We also have an all-white Lowndes County School Board of Education, and all men, white men, I may add. And so let's just say for the record that when these elected officials and when the educators and principals of these schools come upon the next street, what will you tell them why that street is named what it is?
Okay, the next street is named after Nathan Bedford Forrest. And I understand they're trying to say this street was named after a black man. Now, who in their right mind would believe that in 1850, in Georgia, in Valdosta, Georgia, in Lowndes County, Georgia, that they would name a street after a black man? Highly unlikely, but the records show that the Forrest Street was named after Nathan Bedford Forrest, a general in the Confederate Army. Now, he was in the Army less than 3 years. He came into the Army not as a private, not as a sergeant, not as a captain, not as a colonel. He came in as a general, stayed 3 years, a 3-star general. Not only that, he was a slave trader, slave owner, leader of the Klan. And this is who Forrest Street is named after according to the city records right here in Georgia. There's several sources of information, but they all say that the Forrest Street was named after General Nathan Bedford Forrest.
Okay, now, the Valdosta Daily Times, our only newspaper in this metro city, local owned paper, the only one. I go to America's, they got from 5 to 7 newspapers. And my real focus on the publication concerning the renaming of Forrest Street is that I read in the Valdosta Daily Times that there's a possibility that Forrest Street was named after Albert Forrest, or something like Albert. I think you say Albert.
I think you're right.
And they said that he did some great work here, and that they even gave his number as far as being buried in the cemetery there. And I think that the person that brought it up in the paper was a white person. I think it was. And so my concern is this. Back at that day and time, if they were going to name a street after a black man, they probably would have called it Boy Street. Because black men back then were referred to as boys.
That's right.
And so how could somebody do that? I will never know. Let me add this too, because you may not have been here then. But when 15 of us were arrested in the renaming of Barber Park, and Barber Park had a long history, I won't get into it here, you can Google that on here. But he was believed to be a racist. They closed that part, number one, because they had 2 artesian wells, they had swimming pools, and rather than integrate in the early 70s, when a lot of this country was integrated, some areas, some still segregated, but they closed to close that part down rather than let blacks into it. Now, this is my point in bringing this up, is that the Valdosta Daily Times, I have this documented on kvci.blogspot.com, wherein when we found out this history of this park, we went to work. And the Valdosta Daily Times, and I'm not lying on them, nor the editor, they kept publishing that the park was came about because the Barber family donated that land to the city. After Dr. Mark George, I think it was, we found the record, legal document, that they did not donate that land, that land was purchased. And so when it comes down to saying that Forrest Street is named after a black man, I can understand why our only newspaper would be that far off, as if though they didn't know. Of the situation with the Barber Park, many of the high points concerning the renaming of that park went unpublished in the Valdosta Daily Times. So we can expect controversy in getting the street named. By the way, who do they want to name Forest Park after?
We're trying to get it named after Barack Obama, our first African-American president, who done quite a bit for this country and for our culture.
Well, I hear in the paper that, and I also go to valdostotopic.com, and they seem to believe as if though this is a Floyd Rose thing. This is a Floyd Rose idea. But you know, as well as I do, and I've already published it, that it came from a female over 2 or 3 years ago. But no pastor in Valdosta, in my opinion, either didn't hear it or didn't care to pick up the mantle and try to carry it across the finish line to bring it into a reality. But Floyd Rose and the People's Tribunal did.
Yeah, that lady you're talking about, her name is Catherine Harris. She was the one who originally tried to get the street name changed from Forrest to Barack Obama.
And while I'm at it, I may add for the people in New York, Omaha, Nebraska, Atlanta, and even Quitman who may not know this outstanding black woman who does not back down. She has always stood up. She go to church along with a lot of other Christians. But she has always been on point when it comes to building positive for all children and adults alike in this community, and not just for black children, but I may add for all children of this nation and the foreigners that come here.
She's not looking for any credit.
Absolutely.
She'll do it, and if you aim a camera at her, she'll run and hide.
Don't say that, don't say. And you're right.
Listen,
yeah, you're right.
She's not looking to
That's
be
true.
praised. She don't want any credit. She do things because they need to be done. Now, I'm not sure she's
That's
running
true.
high.
That's true.
You know, but she don't do it for the praise. That's and right. For the so people know about Catherine Harris, that she could care less. She's doing it because it needs to be done.
Right. Okay, let's address another area concerning the renaming of Forrest Street to President Barack Obama. Let's just say that if the Jews, the rabbis and the monks, or the people that are in al-Islam on the WD side of the house, and even the Nation of Islam under Minister Louis Farrakhan, or the local churches here, if the members of these churches, along with their pastors and bishops, if they came to Valdosta and if they travel the next street, what history would you give them concerning this? And this is a major street.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to them?
Gordon Street was named after John Brown Gordon, a general in the Confederate Army and a leader in the Ku Klux Klan.
Wow.
Yes.
And Gordon Street is a big street.
Major street.
Major street.
It runs more than 7 blocks, too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then, let's just say that since we're in the neighborhood where we are on this end of town, let's say that some of these big bank owners here in town, let's say that some of these out on Perimeter Road, these big businesses and Industrial Boulevard, the people that works out there, do you think if they ever, when they cross Lee Street, do you think they ever thought about Lee Street, which is the next street? Have they ever thought about maybe who that street is named after?
Well, I can't speak for them. I have no clue what they know, what they might know.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't know, they should know that Lee Street was named after Confederate General Robert E. Lee, commander of the Confederate forces during the Civil War.
Mr. Ransom, it's kind of mind-boggling to me why somebody would make a controversy out of Forrest Street and say that it was named after a black man, when it just don't really, it really just don't make sense. So my question is to you, short form, how do you think they get it off so far?
Well, they don't go to the archives. The Lowndes County Historical Society archives say that Forrest Street was named after Nathan Bedford Forrest. The U.S. Census Bureau slave schedule for the city of Valdosta say it was named after Nathan Bedford Forrest. The city of Valdosta Community Development Department say it was named after Nathan Bedford Forrest. The Pine and Pioneers, a history of Lowndes County, Georgia in 1825 to 1900, they all say it was named after Nathan Bedford Forrest, and then there's 3 more.
Sam, read them anyway. Read them. Go read them. Take your time.
Okay, the St. Julian Revenant's Life and Times of William Lowndes of South Carolina. The General James Jackson chapter, The Daughters of America, the Revolutionary History of the Lowndes County in Georgia. And the New Georgia Encyclopedia. There's 7 different sources that say that it was named after Nathan Bedford Forrest. Now, it's been there, but now this newspaper can't find it.
Well, I understand that even the Mary Turner microfiche, they may have restored it, but it was a time when Dr. Mark George went out there and we got their microfiche, and after a period of time, after it started being published in the paper and we began to educate ourselves, we would go back and try to get that microfiche to actually see the history of that. We couldn't find it. So we hope that they have restored that back. But the police station here is located on what street? And tell me about that street. Because Chief Children, I also understand, he's getting ready to retire and let it go, but he's on the street. What's the next street there?
That's Toombs Street, and it was named after Senator Robert Augustus Toombs. He owned 16 slaves in 1860, and they ranged in age from 2 years old to 60 years old.
Let's go to the next street. Give us the history of the next street there.
It's Hill Avenue. That's named after Senator Benjamin Hill, who in 1860 owned 60 slaves ranging in age from 3 to 50. And he initially opposed secession from the Union because he thought it might lead to the end of slavery.
Wow. And that's the major downtown thoroughfare that runs in front of Miller Hardware and where else? The elderly senior citizen building, and then coming back up. And what about Century? Did you check out Century? You didn't check Century, did you?
Central Boulevard?
Century Street, yeah. I don't have any.
I was looking for a street I was looking for an address. There's a house there, I think the Dasher House.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the Dasher House on Century Boulevard?
Okay.
But it don't exist anymore. It's on 413 But anyway, I drove down that street to make sure my information was accurate, but I couldn't find that building.
But Hill Avenue does go over the bridge and it runs straight through under 75 all the way out that way. So that's and it is named after, say that once again, read that one again.
Hill was named after Senator Benjamin Harvey Hill, who in 1860 owned 60 slaves ranging in age from 3 years old to 50 years old. He initially opposed secession from the Union because he thought it might lead to the end of slavery.
Now let's just think and imagine of the people that come here that want to go to Francis Lake Resort or to Kinderloo Golf Course or to Wild Adventures Theme Park, or who may send their kids here to go to Georgia Military College or Wiregrass Technical College or Valdosta State University or some other nursing program, and they feel privileged as they ride out to the mall area. And I think they will have to travel this next street. And what would you say to them so that they educate them about this street?
Jerry Jones. Okay, Jerry Jones was the son of Barry and Rebecca Jones. In 1860, Jeremiah Jones owned 12 slaves ranging in age from 1 to 14.
Okay, now, all this information that you are speaking of this morning, did this information, I know is kind of asking a kind of a useless question, but did this information come from Reverend Floyd Rowe?
He knows it, yeah, he knows this, but this came from the archives right here in Valdosta, Georgia. So, Reverend Floyd Rowe knows this because we have discussed it.
Okay. So when we hear all these rant and raves, well, not rant and raves, I don't know, but when we hear all this negative information about one or if not the only pastor who will really stand up for civil, human, and women's rights here, and willing to receive the repercussions of his stand, why do you think that they would come after him to the degree that they are?
Well, he's a voice. When he speaks, people listen. They hear what he say, and you know, if you can change the way people think, you can change the way they act. He has a gift. He can put words together, and I don't know how the words come to him, but the words come to him, and he impart these words in a way that you hear it, and it actually changed the way people think, and it changed the way people act.
Yes, sir. And to back that up, I came here, my first tour of duty here in Valdosta was in 1975 by way of Moody Air Force Base. And I was in and around the BCAG, the Black Action Group, back with Rayford and that older crew, wherein I learned a lot from Roof Counselor No, because that's who that was all about. And I have never met any pastor, black or white, Jew or Gentile, Protestant or Catholic, Muslim or Hindu or Bayou, to stand up in the manner of Reverend Floyd Rose, and who has published more letters, had more letters published on hotbed issues in the Valdosta Daily Times as Reverend Floyd E. Rose.
And he did the same thing in Ohio, and he came here from Toledo, Ohio,
yes, sir,
where he did the exact same thing for years and years and years in Toledo, Ohio. He came here to, I guess, retire or get a rest.
That's what he said.
You know,
and went to work.
And went to work.
His wife was against it. His wife said, "Come, let's get some rest," because she knew how those black people treated him. She knew how they called him various names. Yeah. She knew that he put his life on the line, was threatened on behalf of black people. And when you step out like that, too often it's black people who will strike out at you, out of ignorance, I might add.
You can't help people that do not want to be helped, but he will try and try and try. He's not going to give up. And you know, you turn down by 1,000 and you reach one or two here and there. But I've learned this. For each person that you cause to make a positive change, that positive change will have a positive effect on from 17 to 20 other people.
Mm-hmm.
So even though he might reach 1 out of 1,000, by the end of the week, those people that were impacted by that change, the people that they impact will eventually end up being in the thousands as well.
Okay. Mr. Ransom, you have to excuse me. A man of your background, military experience, professionalism, and at least 6 feet tall, what would you say to yourself if you ran across Dasher Lane, which is the next street or lane?
No, Converse would be the next street.
Okay.
Albert Converse. He was at 10. He owned 10 slaves in 1860, ranging in age from 2 to 60. Dasher Lane, however, named after J.A. Dasher, he owned 25 slaves in 1860, ranging in age from 1 to 44. Can you imagine a 1-year-old slave, 2-year-old slave?
Yeah.
But he owned them, he had.
And these numbers, I'm sure, probably is an understatement. I believe they had more. They may have some they couldn't even count.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so we just take that. What about the next street? What about next street? Let's go through the other 2 streets and let's go.
Briggs.
Yeah.
W.H. Briggs owned 13 slaves in 1860, ranging in age from 9 months old to 48 years old. And it's suspected that Wells Street, Rogers Street, Wisenbaker Lane, Spivey Lane, Watson Lane, Kings Lane, and Young Street are named after local slave owners, but they say they're in the process of researching these names.
I believe they already know.
Well,
That's just the way I speak.
But
That's the flavor of my nature.
Oh, we're not going to tell us, I can tell you that now.
Yeah.
We're going to find out.
Yeah. Let's close that out with a statement, if you don't mind. I knew about Lee Street and I knew about Forrest Street, but your research has awakened me and others, even in the church here and the People's Tribunal, and I believe that God worked in mysterious ways. When Catherine Harris came up with the idea, she mentioned me way back, and not only did her idea spark a flame in the minds of black folk, but apparently from what I hear in the paper, it done started a spark in the minds of white people.
Well, let's hope so.
And if it's the right flame, all they will be able to say tomorrow is, we thank Catherine Harris for helping to educate us, our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and coming generations.
Yeah.
And so, as the Muslims say, Hamdulillah, which means all praise is due to the God of creation. I must say this again. I really would like to thank you for your vast amount of information today. I want to thank you for your service to this country. I thank you for being a black man who is not ashamed of being a black man, and for being active in a local church, a civil rights organization. Have put together a video at the Mary Turner Historical Monument on this channel, and because of your work in this community, I want to commend you, and I'm going to start with this video, starting a playlist, recognizing you as an individual, and in the future, as you move forward. A lot of people may not like this term, but as you move closer to your final destination, the grave, you know, my grandmother used to tell me all the time, and my siblings, that we all have a hole in the road.
Oh, yeah.
And so I want to be a part, and I hope that I can donate not only this video, but the other one with dealing with Mary Turner to the Archival Museum, to this museum, so people in years to come will be able to reflect upon what you have done here. And I thank you. Say you're 75 years old.
84.
84, and we want to appreciate you for allowing God to use you. Now, the next area, and we're getting almost ready to wind this up, and I'm just going to let you go through these. We won't take these unless there be a need to. What do you say about the let me put it like this. What you want to talk about next?
Okay. The origin of some of the counties neighboring Lowndes County here in Valdosta, Georgia. One of our neighboring counties is Berrien County, and it was named after Senator John McPherson Berrien, and he owned 142 slaves ranging in age from 1 year to 66 years.
Okay, now Berrien County, it's up above Moody, am I correct? North.
You know, my geography
Yeah,
is hard.
yeah. It's up near Moody, Berrien County. You know, I'm thinking about yes, Berrien County. I cut that out. Okay, and yeah, I just want to say it's up like it's up Berrien County. If not, I correct. Okay, the next one. Let's go to the next way.
Clinch County, named for General Duncan Lamont Clinch, was responsible for killing hundreds of fugitive slaves.
Will you repeat that again? How many?
Hundreds. I don't know if it was more than one. It's a hundreds, but plural.
Right.
That's at least 200. Responsible for killing hundreds of fugitive slaves and Seminoles at the 1816 Battle of Negro Fort. I've never heard of that's my first time hearing of Negro Fort.
Right. We'll research that, but now we know that Clinch County is the home of Homerville, and
Right.
I've been over there to record, and even until this day, according to local citizens over there, they kind of, on the race issue, some people call it a racist county. I won't go as far as to call it a racist county, but I do know what I have recorded at various meetings, and truth speak for itself. And if you ask Rhonda Cross Scott, who went to jail on charges like equipment 10+2 voter fraud, and yet we have a councilman over there by the name of Councilman Weber, and I have been in the Board of Elections meeting wherein he was subject to really going to jail. But the bottom line is this, is that individual is on city council. He has a homestead exemption in the state of Florida. He also have a homestead exemption here in Lowndes County where we live, and holding public office in Clinch County, and he don't have a domicile. And people, the NAACP, the New Black Panther Party, Justice League United, and another organization, all of them addressed that. And you can see that on my channel. You ought to see what took place there. The police had to escort one of the civil rights leaders out. And that's another story for another day. So what's your next county?
The next is Colquitt County, named for Senator Walter Colquitt, who owned 34 slaves in 1850. And they ranged in age from 4 years to 60 years.
And Colquitt County is near Albany.
Yes.
And they tell me that blacks have a great influence on that city, good or bad. But the bottom line is that, read that again for me, please. Since Albany is what it is.
Okay, Colquitt for Senator Walter T. Colquitt, who owned 34 slaves in 1850. They range in age from 4 months to 60 years old.
I was born in Thomasville, Georgia, And I left at the age of 5. That's Thomas County. And I graduated from Brooks County. And when I was coming up, we studied civics lessons, but we didn't get what we needed about Brooks County. Or the Quitman 10+2 had not been arrested, but we did have the Mary Turner lynching. I didn't study her in school, but my grandmama told me about it, and that name about the Week of Terror, when 15 to 25 black was murdered, it was in the streets in the black community because we transported our own news back then because the white-dominated news, for the most part, did not tell our story. And so, coming from Brooks County, the county that I'm from, tell me something about my county.
Named for Senator Preston S. Brooks, who owned 18 slaves ranging in age from 1 year to 33 years in 1850. Now, in 1856, Brooks attacked and nearly beat abolitionist Senator Charles Sumner to death with a cane on the floor of the U.S. Senate. It took Sumner 3 years to recover from the brain injury and return to the Senate.
And to that I will simply say, have mercy, Jesus.
Ooh, man.
When I was a young child, the first time I ever seen the Klan march was in Brooks County, in front of the old courthouse. They marched down in the black community. I was a little child, and I never would forget that. I remember it until this day. Yet, blacks worked on the Livingston plantation, Blackwater plantation, on C.C. Ramsey and Mr. Buck Ramsey property. And a lot of black folk thought that they had white friends. They thought white people loved them. They gave them houses because they were working on their place and had to pay rent. And so they thought they had it made in the shade. Of course, once they got tractors and combiners and cotton pickers, they found out they didn't need them anymore. And they politely asked them to get off their property. And that's what they did. Some of the older blacks, I'm talking about Brooks County where I know what I'm talking about. Now, a lot of children, black kids, were in school. But when it was time to get the cotton or tobacco, whatever it was, they didn't go to school. If they went, they had to take those days out of school to get that money for the white people. And some blacks did not get education because of that. Now, my family and my first cousins, God blessed us or the devil cursed us. We had 50 acres of land. See, I got a few over there now. But we thought that we was very poor because they lived on the plantation. They lived in houses better than ours, but we didn't know that they didn't own them. But when they had to go into the city or wherever they went to live, we stayed on our property and took care of our business. And I would say to black folk, Mama and Daddy can have, sister and brother can have, your neighbor down the street can have, but what?
God bless a child. That's his own.
And I say amen to that.
Amen to that.
Okay, now, then in 1975, I was in the Air Force. My first time coming to Valdosta for any period of time was by way of Mote Air Force Base. And Valdosta is located in the next county. Tell me something about my county.
Lowndes County was established in 1825 from what was then Irwin County. In 1830, 63 of the 2,114 white residents, that's 3%, were slave owners, and they owned a combination of 335 slaves. Lowndes County is named after South Carolina Congressman William J. Lowndes, who owned slaves, opposed the end of the slave trade, and thought enslavement of Americans to be in the slave's best interest.
To that, I'm going to say, that's Lowndes County, and wow. As we get closer to the end, I wanted you to give us the last county, but I wanted your picture in this last one behind you, not that you're from Eccles County, but I often like to leave a little landmark history behind the man. So behind you is a picture of the man. Give us the last one, my brother.
Okay, Eccles County is named after Representative Robert M. Eccles, who in 1830 owned 12 slaves.
12 slaves.
12.
And what do you say about that man picture behind you up there?
And which one?
The man,
This one?
the one that got the hat from the military experience. What do you say about that gentleman
Now,
there?
when we first started to put this museum together, our intention was to organize it in terms of first African American to this, and we tried to organize them in categories, music, sports, and so forth. But the way things came together, as I made the pictures, we just kind of put them wherever there was a space. And we were going to move them around later so that, you know, the politicians, civil rights activists, different categories. Now, I'm here because of the first. I'm the one who created the process for changing a two-dimensional image picture to a three-dimensional image. And I was the first to do that. So I'm here as a first. But other than that...
Mr. Hanson. I'm calling you Mr. Hanson instead of Ransom. Mr. Ransom, when you use the term three-dimensional, define that for me, please.
Well, the length, width, and depth, these are your three dimensions. The regular photograph have two dimensions, length and width. Now this one will give it the third dimension, which is depth. The pictures here, they stand out from the background. The background, and that's the depth. You've got length and width this way, but now we got depth because the background is here and the people in the foreground are here. So if you look at I don't know if it shows up on the camera, but there's a picture here and there's one behind, another one behind, and then you got the background. And some of them, there's three different levels. Most are just two levels. This one is 1, 2, 3 levels. They vary. I've done as many as 5 different levels to give it that much depth. When you visit the museum right here at Serenity Church at 1619 Lee Street in Valdosta, Georgia, we'll give you a tour of the museum and you'll be able to see anything from 2 to 5 different depth on our pictures.
Okay. And how did you learn how to do that, my brother?
Well,
short form, please.
I was a Kennedy saying, look at something that's done, you wonder why. You look at something that's not done and wonder why not. Well, the inspiration came from a friend in California who had a process, I think she called it decoupage, where she would take 3 or 4 pictures to make one. And from that, I got the notion to do it by using transparent mounts and came up with this concept. And it's relatively simple. I mean, there's some computer work involved. Well, there's a lot of computer work involved. And so this is my explanation of how it's done, without telling too much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. we look around the world, foreign nations of the world, Valdosta, Lowndes County is no different. South Georgia is no different. So when we talk about the value of land and the minerals held in the earth or land, back in the day I heard and I read that slavery was a natural mineral resource if properly understood. Some people even said that slavery was black gold. What relevant landmarks is tied to slavery and slave owners here in Lowndes County, Georgia?
Well, number one on the list, the People's Building on 200 North Patterson Street. And today, this is where the King's Grill is located. This was built by Judge Richard Peoples, and he owned 4 slaves in 1860.
If you will, elevate my mind concerning the Weisenbaker building.
Weisenbaker Building located on the northwest corner of Hill and Patterson, and the Weisenbaker Roberts house, Valdosta's oldest house, was built by William Weisenbaker, who in 1860 owned 2 slaves, both were 35 years old.
Stamp my ears with the Converse building.
112 Patterson Street was built by Albert Converse, who in 1860 owned 10 slaves, ranging in age from 2 years to 60 years.
Tell me, as God told the children of Israel, hear ye, O Israel. I want to hear something about the Dasher house.
413 Central Avenue. Central was built by J.A. Dasher, who in 1860 owned 25 slaves ranging in age from 1 year to 44. Now there's 5 more houses built by Dasher in the Fairview neighborhood.
There are many people that would have never known this, my beautiful brother, if you had not brought it to us. So before we go to the next and final point, what do you say about the largest sea cotton market in the world? And we do know this. And let me throw in a little bit here, because there's something about Valdosta I didn't know, but I had a white pastor to inform me with some great knowledge. He gave it to me. And he told me how Lowndes County got much of its wealth through the cotton situation, the Civil War, that they stored their cotton and they didn't sell it. I didn't know that. That was deep knowledge for me. He had a lot of historical information that we all don't have privy to. And I want to thank that beautiful brother by the name of Pastor Bennett, who shared that with me. So tell us about this cotton situation.
The largest island sea cotton market in the world once stood...
Well, excuse me. Hold it right there. I need you to start over again, because I thought, I'm sure, I believe that I might have misunderstood you, because I thought we were dealing with Valdosta, Lowndes County in the state of Georgia, but I think you're trying to sneak one in on me and take me out of this whole country. So I need you to start over again, make sure that I'm hearing you right.
The largest island sea cotton market in the world.
The world.
The world, the whole planet, once stood where the main branch of the Bank of America once stood at 106 South Patterson.
It's currently located, and it's not
No,
currently,
anymore.
right, but the building is there, right.
That building, but the building still exists, right there, 106 South Patterson. That was the largest cotton market in the world.
And we do know that slaves had a great impact in picking cotton. They didn't have cotton pickers back then. The only cotton pickers they had were the people of a darker hue and poor whites.
Oh, yeah.
And a couple of Indians. Yes, sir. But they say history records that their backs was not as strong as the black back. I didn't say that. That's history. Tell us a little bit about these, please.
Well, you might remember a couple years ago, this church in Charleston, they had a Bible study and prayer.
Emmanuel.
And this little young white fella come in and sat down, had prayer, Bible study, and he, after the service was over,
Dylan Roof.
he jumped up and he killed 9 people plus the pastor. This is the Charleston 9, and this is the church where they were studying and having their prayer service, and these are the 9 people that were killed in South Carolina, including Senator Clemente Pinckney.
I may add a little information that, in fact, there it is right there. It's Emmanuel.
Emmanuel AME
Church. Emmanuel, yeah, Emmanuel AME Church. And I may add this concerning this display here. I'm asking you all to Google the thiacol explosion in Woodbine, Georgia, and I hope that we'll be able to tie that into the museum at some point. But I personally, it's just me, to you who watch this, I would like to see a picture of Dylan Roof up there. Sure would.
Well, I do have one. I had a brainstorm. Now these are 11 by 14, except the one of Senator Pinckney. That's 13 by 19. But I have one that's a 4 by 5, a really small picture. My brainstorm was to place him somewhere way down there on the bottom.
Sounds good to me, my beautiful brother. All right, my brother. Well, I want to thank. Go ahead. You got
I haven't done that yet.
Okay.
But that's a thought that's in my head now. You know, I try not to be offensive. Now, you know, white people have treated us really bad over the centuries.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are some wonderful people that are white. There are people who gave their life
Absolutely.
for this struggle, and we can show you some in a few minutes. We've
Right.
got them right here. People that were lynched in those marches on Mississippi and in Alabama. These were white. We have people right now. And, you know, I'm sure this would be offensive if the shoe was on the other foot, if all of these were white folks that were lynched by black folks or who made some contributions and they didn't get the credit. That would be kind of insulting to people who really didn't think that way but were black to see this. And I thought about that. That's why I was kind of hesitant about putting that picture or displaying it that way. But
Right.
I certainly thought about it.
Thank you.
And I
Let me,
haven't forgotten about it.
okay, let me add one other thing here too, because people may not know this. That young white Caucasian brother, we must say that he did his homework, because this church have a long history. And when you talk about Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey, you will run across this particular church, what it stood for. And so when that young man went to this particular church, he had done his research. He had done his homework. He know that when that black man terrorized white folk, he had the whole history of it. And he knew the story of Mr. Turner. They call that a massacre. History has it that when Mr. Turner believed that God told him to move, and he moved, they say they heard that Nat Turner was coming to town. It's in the history books that one white man was sitting on the porch with his gun. They heard he was coming to town, so he had a heart attack. Nat Turner is one person in history that actually sought to use on white people what white people was using on black people. But we want to thank God that Martin Luther King and many other black leaders today, including Reverend Rose, believe in the nonviolent movement in getting things done, because after all, we don't know the big picture of what God is doing. But in the end, Brother Ryan will say this as we get ready to close this out. In the end, you can expect these words to be made a reality. Only truth, right, and justice will win in the end. And now we have Reverend Rose as we close this out. Reverend Rose, what inspired you to build this museum and construct it?
Well, I've been concerned for more than 20 years about black folk not knowing where they came from or who their real ancestors were and how smart we are as a people. And so when I moved to Valdosta in 1995, and I started out at the church at Pine Hill, but really discovered that the people weren't interested in either their past or their present. And they wanted to just feel good on Sunday morning about feeling bad on Saturday night, but they weren't any better off on Monday morning. And so in 2007, I believe, or 2009, I started the Serenity Church of Valdosta. And we discovered that it was on Lee Street, named after a Confederate general named Robert E. Lee. The address was 1619, the year that the slaves landed at Jamestown, Virginia. And the telephone number here was 241-1863. 1863, of course, was the year that Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Blacks thought they were free, but we really weren't free, but at least we accepted that date. That is when we decided that we ought to put a black museum in here. And so we set aside 10,000 square feet of space to house the black museum. And so that's what we're doing now. And we're excited about it, and people are coming here from all over. And we let them come through here free. We don't charge anybody anything. If somebody wants to leave a donation, fine, but we don't charge anybody anything. I just want to make sure that the people in this area know and understand that we are a proud people. We come from a proud heritage, that Africa is our heritage, where we came from, who we are. America is our experience, where we live now. We don't deny either one of those. You can't deny either your heritage or your experience. And so we are, in a sense, African Americans.
Reverend Rose, we have covered a lot of information this morning, been here for hours. And personally, I want to thank you in this lifetime for all that you have done, and I won't even try to mention not even one thing that you've done. But I just want to say thank you for the work that you've done. And in closing, the renaming of Forrest Street is what we have been covering. And I want you to state for the record that there is more behind the renaming of that street than Reverend Floyd E. Rose. Am I right?
Thank you very much. It was not even my idea. I promoted it, I stand by it, and I work for its fruition. The idea came from one of the members of the tribunal named Catherine Harris, who is a beautiful person. And when she mentioned it, all of us just jumped on it. And we were told what we had to do, and we are doing that now. And in a few days, we should have all of the signatures necessary to get it changed. I would hope that since City Council is predominantly black, they will not turn their backs on an idea whose time has come.
Okay, Reverend Rose, now you did not give Mr. Ransom the information that he just presented on camera, did you?
No.
Now
I don't even know what he gave you.
Well, now he's behind you, and here he come. Now he gonna tell his story. Thank you, my beautiful brother.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
This presentation was the Lowndes County Historical Society Archives, the U.S. Census Bureau slave schedules for the city of Valdosta, the City of Valdosta Community Development Department, Pines and Pioneers, a history of Lowndes County, Georgia from 1825 to 1900. The St. Julian Ravenel's Life and Times of William Lowndes of South Carolina, General James Jackson Chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution's History of Lowndes County from 1825 to 1941, and the New Georgia Encyclopedia.
And so will you please help me, because I know you're a mortician. Can you help me bury what many people here in Valdosta seem to put in the news media, that this is all about Floyd Rose? So I hope you just help bury those untruths here in Valdosta and Lowndes County.
Not about Reverend Rose, it's about Valdosta, Georgia.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now this room, this is our finance office. And in here, we have pictures of some of the white people that have made great contributions in this struggle for equality.
Okay.
And as we walk in the door, the lighting here isn't the very best. These three, William Cheney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, they were lynched in Mississippi. In a bus ride, they caught the bus, burnt the bus up, drug people off, and killed these three people, Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner. Jonathan Daniels and James Reed, they also gave their life in the struggle for African American justice.
So it's not just a black thing when it comes to equal justice under the law.
No. Jimmy Lee Jackson and Viola Louiso, they were lynched in the civil rights struggle. On this wall, there's several white people who, Ralph McGill, Lee Touchton. My memory failed me on some of these names.
That's okay.
I don't have their tags on up there to help me.
Angela Davis.
Yeah, Angela Davis and George Jackson.
Yes, sir. Let me say this about Lee Touchton. Lee Touchton made history. She has kind of stepped away from the people here in Valdosta and the black experience. But I travel many places with her, and the work that she did, and I'm sure will continue to do at her own level, is a great accomplishment, and we commend the Honorable Lee Tushton based upon the work that she did as president of the NAACP and a real person that we need to mention. And I don't know if we have him, but we got to get a picture of Dr. Mark George and Aris Santos as well. Okay, go ahead, my brother. I'm sorry.
Can't think of this man's name. It's not McGill.
Okay.
And I know it, but I just can't think of it. But he was a mathematician, and he encouraged black African Americans, and especially women, to major in mathematics. Two of the heavyweight greatest, Jack Johnson and Joe Louis, I'm sorry. Tennis greats, Arthur Ashe, Althea Gibson. Here we have Marion Anderson, Leontine Price, Paul Robeson, Mahalia Jackson, great singers. Gymnast, swimmer, Simone Manuel, gymnast, Simone Biles, and I can't think of her name. Her name's kept out of, they put the tag on that. Billionaire, Sheila Johnson, who was on the B of Jet and Ebony magazine.